All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a huge question today. What is really shaping our diet here in the UK? We all like to think it's about willpower, right? But what if it's not? A massive new scientific review looked at 2 decades of research, and it suggests the answer is a big fat no. And honestly, what it found, or maybe what it didn't find, is the really eye-opening part. First things first, let's just absorb this quote from the research itself. Since 2014, obesity has contributed to more deaths in the UK than smoking. Wow, that really puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? This isn't just some casual conversation about eating better. This is a massive public health crisis. So, whenever we talk about diet and health, the conversation almost always seems to circle back to this idea: personal responsibility, willpower. But is that really the whole picture? Well, more and more researchers are saying, hang on a second. The world around us, our environment, plays a much, much bigger role than we give it credit for. And that brings us to this key idea: the food environment. It sounds kind of academic, but it's really simple. It's everywhere you and I interact with food. It's the supermarket, sure, but it's also the takeaway on the corner, the vending machine at work, and yeah, all those delivery apps on your phone. It's the entire ecosystem that's constantly nudging us towards certain choices every single day. Okay, so before we dive into the new research, let's just quickly get a handle on the scale of this problem. Because the numbers, well, they paint a pretty clear picture of a trend that's going in the wrong direction and fast. So in England, more than a quarter of adults have obesity. In Scotland, it's almost a third. But here's the number that really gets me. Look at the kids. In just 1 year, the rate for 10 to 11-year-olds jumped by over 4%. A spike that sharp, that fast. That's not just a few kids making different choices. That points to a much bigger, systemic issue at play. All right, so faced with this growing crisis, a team of scientists decided to do something really ambitious. They set out to map literally everything we know about the UK's food environment. You can think of it like they were creating the first ever atlas of food research to finally see the whole landscape in one place. And when I say ambitious, I mean it. This was a colossal effort. They had to sift through more than 31,000 different scientific articles published over 20 years just to boil it all down into this one single map of what we've been studying. So to organize this giant map, they broke it down into 6 key areas: the big forces that shape what we eat. You've got: is the food even available to you? Can you afford it? How is it being promoted and advertised? What's the quality of the food itself? And then 2 really big ones for modern life: how convenient is it? And what about sustainability? So the big moment arrives. They finished this massive project. What does the grand map of food research actually show us? Well, the first big takeaway was a bit of a shocker. The map, it wasn't balanced at all. In fact, it's incredibly lopsided. It turns out we've been looking at our food world with some serious tunnel vision. And this chart says it all, really. Just look at this. Over 60% of all the research, all of it, has been focused on just 2 things: what food is available and what its quality is like. But then you look at something like affordability, which for millions of families is the #1 thing that matters, and it's just this tiny 5% sliver of the pie. And it's not just what we're studying, it's where we're looking. The research is overwhelmingly focused on supermarkets, which makes sense, right? But then look over at the online world, the delivery apps that have completely changed how we eat in the last few years. Just 12 studies found. 12! We're basically studying a brick-and-mortar world while our habits have gone digital. And this, right here, brings us to the most important part of this whole story. Because the real headline isn't just what's on the map. It's the massive, glaring holes. It's the parts of our daily lives that science has, for some reason, almost completely ignored. And this creates a really wild contrast. You know, we've spent decades counting the number of fast food places in a neighborhood, but we've barely studied the impact of delivery apps that bring that food right to your sofa. We analyze the nutrients in food down to the last milligram. But what about the real-world pressure of how much time a busy parent actually has to cook a meal? And that leads us to the single most shocking number in this entire massive review of over 30,000 papers: 0. That's right. Out of all that research, not a single study was found that focused squarely on the role of convenience. You know, the actual time it takes to get food, cook it, and eat it. I mean, come on. Anyone who has ever felt too tired or too busy to cook knows that convenience isn't some minor detail. A lot of the time, it's the only thing that matters. And yet, it's a total blind spot. So, okay, we've got a lopsided map of the world with huge holes in it. Why does that actually matter? Well, it matters because it directly cripples our ability to solve the very health crisis we started with. Because it's really pretty simple. If your understanding of a problem is incomplete, your solutions are going to be incomplete too. Any policy that only focuses on what's available in supermarkets is going to completely miss the people who are struggling with the cost of living, with having no time, and with the constant pull of that digital food world. So, if we're actually going to build a healthier nation, we need research that starts asking the real questions. We have to understand how all these pieces fit together. We need to know the whole complex story of how a modern person in the UK actually lives and eats. And that leaves us with one last thought. Just think about your own life, your own week. When you're making a choice about what to eat, what's really in the driver's seat? Is it what's available? Is it what you can afford? Or, if you're being really honest, is it just what's fast and easy in that moment? The answer might just tell you more than 2 decades of research ever could.